In this video, we're going to be talking about test plugs and isolation technology. What I want you to get out of this is, number one, the history of test plugs and the legacy tools that most of our industry is used to using. Understand a little bit about the sealing technology and the legacy types of tool configuration. And then we're going to dive into new types of seals and a whole array of different types of isolation and test plugs that'll help you solve far more of your isolation and testing challenges than you've ever had in the past. So let's dive in and we'll talk about test plugs. So test plugs really became popular in the 1990s, and most people who were around in the 1990s will recognize these types of tools that either had a barrel with O-rings or a shaft with O-rings. And the whole point of this tool was to create an isolated area, either to guard from LELs that were upstream during the hot work process, or to isolate a weld in between the two seals to enable you to perform a hoop hydro test to prove that the weld had integrity. And so you've had a few different tools and yet you're familiar with, as I said, the barrel style of tool and a shaft style of tool. Now, these were common tools that were available from a couple of different manufacturers and suppliers in the 1990s. One used an O-ring style tool, and the other effectively used a hockey puck. It was a slab of polyurethane. In both cases, these tools used compression to compress these rubber sealing elements to create an isolated area. Now, the basic premise in a compression tool is to compress that seal between two plates that induces a pressure in the rubber of 1.5 times the pressure you're trying to isolate. So pushing that rubber O-ring between two plates so that its rubber pressure presses out against the pipe wall at a pressure of 1.5 times the hydro test. Now, this was revolutionary compared to having to do full system hydro tests, but this was the 1990s. And there was lots of other technology that became famous and popular in the 1990s as well. The PlayStation 1, we had one of those in our house. The Sony Walkman, whether it was a cassette or the CD versions. The Palm Pilot. Here's an old favorite of mine, the text pager, and of course, the tried and true flip phone, the StarTech flip phone. All of these were all 1990s technology that we all came to know and love if you were in the 1990s. But we're now in the 21st century, and just like this technology, hydro testing and isolation technology has made leaps and bounds, and our options and our capabilities for performing these kinds of tests have also grown significantly. And the key message here in this century, as in every other century, has been use the right tool. But if you only know that you have one tool available, then you try to use it in all applications. And with the advancements in isolation and test plug technology, you now have many more choices. Just like you have many different configurations in your piping system, you now have choices and options in terms of the right tools for the kinds of applications that you're going to be trying to repair and to pressure test or to isolate. And the way that I want you to think about the difference between what was available 30 years ago and what's available today is like you see on the screen here right now. The old rusty wrench, just like the StarTech and the PlayStation 1, we retired those tools and we now have a whole wider array of tools for that space. And so we have the old wrench, or we have the test plug toolbox, a much wider array of choices for the way that you hydrotest and the way that you isolate in all of your pressurized piping and all of your vessel modifications. And so as we move forward, we need to move past the old rusty wrench and onto the test plug toolbox, a wide selection of different styles of isolation and test plug technology that can really drive cost effectiveness, that can improve safety, and most of all, inside of your turnaround and on your piping projects, will just dramatically improve productivity. And so this test plug toolbox gives you a much wider selection of tools than has ever been available before. And we have spent the last 13, almost 14 years designing, procuring, and building a wide selection of tools. And the key point in the creation, the ideas in this innovation, is many of the tools that we offer today came from one source, one request, one need to solve a problem, to take on a challenge. And it came from our clients asking us to solve challenges for them, new and different isolation and testing requirements. And the test plug toolbox was a natural evolution of all of those kinds of requests to solve problems. So why don't we dive in and start talking about 21st century isolation and test plug options that you have?